SABC breakfast briefings that we are speaking a lot about the budget and some of the issues on the periphery. You know, a lot of people looking out for their own interest in the budget, and rightfully so. So let's speak to some of those issues now. Leanne, it's back to you.
Ayanda, thank you very, very much. Yes, indeed. I can see we're crisscrossing around the country at the moment. There's so many issues. It's a very, very busy news morning. Well, we couldn't miss out on an opportunity here on Morning Live to speak to our former Finance Minister, Trevor Manuel. He was at the breakfast. We never had an opportunity to hear from him inside the room. So what we've done is we've dragged him outside. I'm not sure if you're kicking and screaming, but we did drag you outside.
I've been kidnapped by Leanne and the gang, so good morning.
We cannot not have you here. How did you find things at the moment? I mean, everybody was talking about the fact that this was going to be one of the most difficult budgets since 1994. Did you agree with that sentiment? Or, I mean, being in that position, surely it was hard for you too.
I think that this budget was hard for a number of reasons. One of the reasons is obviously that the mismatch between revenue and expenditure has grown. And that the budget requires a number of internal actions. And so the focus on all of government becomes fundamentally important, because unless the budget is truly a statement of collective cabinet responsibility, I think it'll come short, because what the minister indicated is that there isn't a heck of a lot of room to raise taxes in South Africa. And so restructuring what happens inside of government becomes fundamentally important. The other issue is that I understand the budget is cyclical. Work on the 2017 budget will start in about a month. And you had these dramatic changes early in December. And the minister coming in and not necessarily having been part of all of the rhythm building up to the budget. And I think for those reasons, the anticipation about the budget increased very, very dramatically. And it's to that set of circumstances that Minister Gordon responded yesterday.
Yeah. He certainly did. And I mean, he did. He said it up front in the breakfast this morning, talking about the fact that, you know, he's been in this for a short while. Having been in a portfolio for 5 weeks, I mean, previous to this, he was focusing in on local government, and that is a huge section to focus in on South Africa. But I mean, to suddenly now change tack, have a look at the economy and come up with a budget going forward that's got to save an economy, that's a big thing. But the big deal is to save South Africa from that junk status. Do you think he's done enough?
It's a very difficult issue. One of the reasons why it's difficult is that the key players in the ratings agencies have been doing this for very long. So my sense of what they do is they kind of sit in a cockpit, and there are a myriad of dials. The woman who runs Moody's has been doing the same thing on South Africa since 1995. Nobody else has been doing the same thing for that length of time. So they see little movements in data, and it's that we must be concerned about. I think that in many respects there's been a concern about the rising public service wage bill, and that I think is an issue that he's responded to. The big challenge for us is stimulating growth in the economy. You spoke about that this morning again, but I think a big positive is that out of the crisis of the last few weeks, business has come to the party. There's a magnificent statement by CEOs in South Africa committing themselves and their companies to be part of change, and I think that places us in a very strong position. There's also an indication that Labour would be part of this, and this morning Minister Gordon made an appeal to all sectors of society to recognize that we can actually pull this country from the mire, because if we don't, then I think junk status awaits us. And once you've kind of fallen into that pit, it's exceedingly difficult to get out. And unfortunately, one of our peer group countries, Brazil, has just fallen into it now with the last downgrade by a ratings agency yesterday. And it's going to be exceedingly difficult, because suddenly the fact that government has to borrow at higher rates, companies have to borrow at higher rates, price changes become the order of the day. It's very difficult to have government in control of all policy. It's that situation that we must understand the impact of and work very hard to avoid.
Yeah, I mean, you've been there. You've been at difficult times. I mean, if we look back, your toughest budget, if I'm not mistaken, was around about 1996. And I mean, there was a lot of pressure on you. And you say markets are cyclical, economies are cyclical. People think it's all doom and gloom, but is it really? I mean, you managed to pull us out of those times.
Look, the first budget I did I was appointed in 96, but the first budget was a 97 budget. And that first year was very, very difficult because, we came into government in a sort of blaze of glory and trust, and we realized that the situation was very difficult. Expenditure was high, debt was rising at a very rapid pace. We needed to arrest the situation. There was a big fallout with trade unions about that arresting of growing debt and fiscal mismatch. And so 97 was very, very tough. But, along the lines, I've learned that you've got to be able to talk to markets all the time, but frequently they overreact. People who sit at trading desks look at short-term interest frequently, and they don't coincide with the view of the Minister of Finance. He has to take a longer view, and he articulated very well this morning that it's not just about the next year. You've got to, because we take a view of a 3-year expenditure framework, he must be able to keep South Africa on side over the next 3 years. It's not all fixed numbers, but if we understand that the more we can do in the first year, the easier it becomes in years 2 and 3, because the challenges of raising sufficient revenue haven't quite disappeared, and you drew attention to some of the burning issues and burning in intended pun on campuses and so on. It's rather unfortunate, but part of it is also being able to reach out to a generation who didn't feel the pain of apartheid, because the people we're talking of are born after that, didn't feel the same pain, didn't live through the transition, but it doesn't mean we must exclude them. I think we've got to reach out and ensure that they understand why certain decisions need to be taken, why all of their dreams and desires are not going to be fulfilled immediately. It's not only them. I think that what a budget like this, which attempts a fiscal consolidation, also does is it limits the dreams and aspirations of the colleagues of Minister Gordhan, because not everything is going to be done immediately, and these challenges, I think, remain. But it's a very good budget in very trying circumstances.
Good. It's good to get your stamp of approval onto it, because it's a tough one, and South Africans are feeling quite low at this time. So it's good to hear that it was a good budget in your opinion. Very quickly, as I wrap up and get your final opinion on this, another pressing issue is the currency. You've been there. I mean, during your tenure, the rand also went to very, very low levels. We're seeing it again. Can we recover? Can we get back to those glory days? I mean, the rand is certainly undervalued.
Look, the one thing we must appreciate about exchange rates is that they fluctuate all the time. In fact, if you look at rand depreciation over the past 2 months, and you compare it to a pound sterling has actually fallen faster on the debate around Brexit in the past week than the rand has fallen in 3 months. So these big fluctuations happen all the time. What we must not do is attach all our emotions to one indicator such as the exchange rate. It is difficult. I think that in the present circumstance we're helped by the fact that oil prices are as low as they are, because that is a fundamental import for a country like South Africa. But eventually I think the balances will be restored.
Minister, I still can't call you Trevor. Thank you so much for talking to us.
Thank you very much.
You can go back. Luckily, you're only having yogurt, so it hasn't gotten cold. That was our former Minister of Finance, Trevor Manuel, just giving us his views on the budget. And it always is comforting hearing from our former Finance Minister here on the programme, and I'm sure you feel exactly the same way. Let's take a break.